Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monday Morning Must Knows. My name is Merlin Rothfeld. Here are several things to pay attention to for the upcoming trading week. Now, of course, last week we saw a lot of pain in those major broad indexes, S&P, NASDAQ, Russell, Dow, all looking pretty weak. Now, some of those indexes, the Russell, S&P, coming right back down into demand zones, which may cause a bounce earlier in the week, particularly on Monday's session. But what does that mean for the rest of the week? Will we see continued market moves to the upside? Can't tell you what's going to happen there because we have way too much going on with regards to uncertainty in the market. Earnings is upon us, and this week we have some monster names. So let's kick things off with our earnings calendar. 943 companies reporting this week. Whew, it is a doozy. On Monday, we start things off with Verizon, Nucor, and Cadence Design Systems. Tuesday, we start to get some big names out there. Tesla, the big daddy who's been getting beaten down recently, even cutting prices on their cars. They have Visa, you have PepsiCo, you have Novartis, General Electric Aerospace, Philip Morris, and UPS. Now, I'm just going to say this with a little bit of an asterisk, and I should do this every time we talk about the earnings calendar. We are in the midst, knee-deep in earnings season. Many times, there are so many companies reporting earnings, I cannot put them all on this. So I am cherry-picking the bigger names, usually the big market cap ones, the notable names. But please, this is not all of them that are reporting earnings. Again, there's 943. There will be many more that are not on this list. I think Raytheon is reporting on Tuesday. It's not on this list because I just don't have space. So check your earnings calendar and make sure you don't get caught off guard holding something that may be coming out with an earnings announcement and just destroy your account. So let's keep on moving on here to Wednesday's activity where it gets even bigger. Meta, IBM, Thermo Fisher, AT&T, Lam Research, Boston Scientific, and the beaten down Boeing. Boeing down over 36% over the past year or so. So a pretty ugly slide for Boeing, and we'll see if that continues through their earnings announcement. Moving on to Thursday, it gets even bigger. You think, wait, Tesla's huge. Meta's massive. What could make this even better? A double on Thursday. We start things out with Microsoft and Google. Largest company in the United States market. Microsoft, you've got Google or Alphabet, but for me, it will always be Google, folks. I can't do it. The ticker symbol's GOOG. You're always going to be Google. You've got Merck, AstraZeneca, Caterpillar, Intel, and Union Pacific. And then we finish things off on Friday with some oil and gas plays. You've got ExxonMobil, Chevron, Phillips 66, and finally AbbVie. Bottom line is huge potential market movers here. So this is one of those weeks where you really got to be careful about your position size and picking a direction which way these markets can go. Because at any moment, Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, Google, boom, they can cause those markets to rip one direction or the other, not just with their earnings announcements, but their press conference and forecasts for prices going forward. So be very careful this week. And that's not just with earnings. I got a lot more to talk about. So let's move on and talk about global events, things that are impacting more markets than just the United States. We start things with the services and manufacturing data. That's going to happen on Tuesday, pretty much all day. We start things across the pond in Europe with France at 3:15 a.m. Eastern Time, followed by Germany at 3:30, the whole EU at 4 a.m. Then you have England at 4:30 a.m. and finally rounding things out with the United States at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Time. That will be 15 minutes into the trading day, so be careful with that one. Now, these announcements aren't as earth-shattering or major market moving. However, services and manufacturing are a decent part of those economic growth cycles that happen in any one of these countries. So if we see some surprises or some misses or beats on these numbers, it may have an impact, but probably not as impactful as the next number I'm going to read to you. It's a big one, and that is going to be the GDP numbers for the United States. That is going to happen on Thursday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, so the 1 hour before the equity markets open here in the United States. And this is the advanced GDP. Remember, there are three different announcements for GDP. You have advanced, you have preliminary, and then you have final. And they kind of revise as they go forward, but this is kind of the first look at this quarter's GDP number. Now, of course, it's not going to come out for a little while, but it's just taking in all the data points we have now and hypothesizing about what it might be. Now, is it going to be good or bad? Well, as you can see here, it says 3.3 on the right side of your screen. The GDP rate right now for the U.S., 3.4. And the reason it's 3.4 is because this is an annualized number. You can see, take the last 4 bars, take the average, it's actually 3.4. Now, the interesting piece for this is the expectations right now are that we're going to come out at 2.5. That would show further economic slowdown, which would not be a good sign in the eyes of our government and the Fed. Of course, the Fed isn't responsible for GDP, but their actions certainly influence. So keep an eye on this one. It's going to be a very important announcement Thursday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. That's our advanced GDP. But wait, there's more. Just when you think we're done for the week, Merlin, it's been too long. I can't do a 15-minute Monday morning must-knows. Let's keep things moving right along into the most important announcement for the week, other than the earnings calendar. That's going to be U.S. inflation numbers. Core PCE price index numbers come out Friday at 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. And the reason that this is such a monumental announcement is right now everybody is expecting rate cuts this year. Let's cut rates and fuel the economy and surge it even higher. Well, remember, that could also fuel inflation. And we saw recently, last month, we had CPI numbers come out higher than expected, showing more inflationary pressure. Not good. Then you had PPI numbers come out, which showed stable pricing. That's okay. So it puts the Fed in a little bit of a corner. The pressure is on them to be cutting rates, but if inflation continues to rise, then they will be forced to hold longer. And if it does rise sharply enough, then the dreaded conversation may switch from, rate cuts to maybe even getting some rate increases, which would not be good for these equity markets overall. So this is one of those announcements you really got to keep your eye on. What are we looking at? Well, as you can see, 0.3 is the most recent reading of this, and it's a monthly report. Well, we've seen over the past 4 months, inflation has been increasing rather sharply. Now, what do we believe here? Do we believe that the CPI number is going to drag this up, or that PPI will buoy it and it comes right in line with expectations? Right now, the expectation is 0.3, so they're expecting it to stay the same. Now, why is this important? Why should you pay attention? Well, if there is any deviation from 0.3, the market's going to go haywire, one way or the other. Personally, if I had to wager on it, I would say we're most likely to come in line right where it's at, just because that's the statistical probability. However, I like to take the odds here, and I'm thinking that given what happened with the CPI numbers, given what's happened with crude oil over the past few months, I think you may actually see this core PCE index numbers come out at 0.4. If that does happen, then that, of course, would create a lot of waves in the market and probably create some downside movement with the expectation that Fed's going to keep rates the same for longer going into the tail end of this year. So that, my friends, is a lot of information to digest. We got a ton of stuff happening here, and I hope that was enough information for you for the Monday Morning Must-Knows. You've got a tremendous amount of earnings, services, manufacturing numbers. You have core PCE price index and GDP numbers, so be very careful. It's going to be a very volatile week. Until then, happy trading, my friends. I'll see you next week on Monday Morning Must-Knows.